Greetings and welcome back to DEFKON. I'm Android with Loud and Clear, and today we are taking a look at the aircraft for the first contract, which was explained in the previous video. This contract, if you don't remember, was for an attack aircraft to replace the discount Warthog, known as the A-11 Puma, and we got some very interesting submissions. A couple of them didn't make it through due to rules and things such as that. 6 of them made it through that, as far as actually following the rules and meeting the requirements on a basic level. 6 of them made it. Beyond that, I brought it down to a short list of 4 aircraft. The 2 that were eliminated were the Plen, that's what it's called, for having low ordnance capacity compared to the other aircraft, and the Snow Leopard for having low fuel and ordnance capacity compared to the other aircraft. They met the requirements, but they didn't quite make the cut compared to everybody else. So, well done, but you didn't quite get through. So with that out of the way, the remaining 4 aircraft will be competing in a mock-up of what they would be expected to accomplish on any given mission, or just the basic type of mission that they're supposed to accomplish, with an assortment of enemy craft that they were given to test against while they were building these aircraft. So, without further ado, let's get on to the first aircraft. Our first aircraft of the 4 is the KF-10 Woodpecker, sent in by Kraken Fury. This is, well, it's a chunky A-10. It's got that tail section at the back there. Definitely plenty of ordnance. Of course, upgrading the A-10's engines for twin Saturns, which is definitely an interesting choice. And yeah, it's nothing crazy. It's not insanely fast, not insanely maneuverable. It's just a solid weapons platform. So we will see how it does in this engagement. definitely not an ideal performance from the Woodpecker, I would say. It did actually, kill a few ground targets, so points on the board, but yeah, not quite. I'm sure not quite what Kraken Fury was expecting, or, well, maybe what he was expecting, but not what he was hoping for. Yeah, so let's see if our next aircraft can do any better. The next aircraft is the Zircon A-28 Vulture, sent in by Panzer. This is, in my opinion, a beautiful aircraft. It definitely reminds me somewhat of an Me-262, although definitely more of a Vautour, if I am pronouncing that correctly. That's just how I've pronounced it. A French attack aircraft, jet fighter, whatever you want to call it. It is a very cool design, especially the tail. The tail is really cool, and it's, decently maneuverable. Not especially quick, but it is efficient with those WS-10 engines, and it has, from what I can tell, what I think will be a very high-performing weapon loadout. Definitely seems like it can do a lot of good. And so, yeah, it's got 2 Mausers as far as the guns, which is not, I prefer a GAU, but Mausers are plenty accurate, so as long as the AI is good with them, it could be significantly more effective than a GAU. Regardless, we'll see. Very solid performance from the Vulture. I very much like this aircraft. I like how it flies. I like how the AI flies it. And it seems to be very effective at what it was designed to do. So, let's move on and see if the next aircraft can top that. Our third attack craft of the day is the A-15 Roaring Tiger by HB Stratus. Stratos, obviously. This is a very heavy aircraft. That's the first thing I noticed when I flew it. Incredibly heavy. The engines do a good enough job of keeping it in the air. It's got enough lift, but mainly it has a ton of ordnance loaded out right here. A decent reliance actually on radar missiles. Things, mainly the AIM-120D. Actually, I believe is the only radar missile that it uses. Supposed to be an air-to-air missile, but in this case it's being used as an AGM, air-to-ground missile. And hey, nothing against that. I mean, if it works, right? And we will see how well this aircraft works. This one actually has a set of manual instructions, as well as the next aircraft also has a set of manual instructions that I will be following. For this one, it's just as far as engaging initially, the initial salvo of missiles, and then the AI will do its own thing. The next one's a little more involved, but we'll get to that. For now, let's see what the Roaring Tiger can do. pretty solid performance right there. I would be satisfied with that if I made this aircraft. But let's see this last attack plane, and then we'll see how they stack up against each other, I suppose. Finally get a good idea of how all of them are compared to each other. So let's move on. The last plane we will be seeing today is the FF-235A GSP-1 by Stardust. No name, just a designation. I can respect that, but it is kind of boring. It does look very good, though. It is... I'd say it's probably the most maneuverable, and it's not inefficient. It only has one Saturn engine, and it can go decently fast on cruise. Well, I say decently fast. It cannot go very fast on cruise, actually, but it can cruise for a decent amount of time and does not need to be that fast. Despite the fact that it doesn't have that many weapons, it should be... well, it doesn't have that many heavy weapons. Obviously, it has a ton of Hellfires, but just, I don't know. The fact that it's only got the 2 Mavericks, that's just what's got me right now. But, you know, Hellfires are good. So, we'll see what it can do with them, I suppose. And I suppose those racks could be repurposed for other weaponry. But definitely not quite as heavily armed as the other aircraft. Or couldn't be quite as heavily armed as the other aircraft. It's considering that it only has the one engine, it can only lift so much. So, yeah, we'll just see what it can do with what it has, and work it out from there. This plane came with a very specific set of manual instructions. I'll be flying it manually for most of the flight, and it basically involves a bunch of kiting. Not very exciting stuff, just kind of sitting outside of range and lining up laser targets and firing missiles at them. So I cut this one up nice and quickly for you all, so that, yeah, we can just kind of roll through this. You'll see the highlights, you'll see every hit, but just cutting out all the clutter in between. So, I'll see you once this is done. So a solid performance out of the FF235. It definitely took a lot longer than the other aircraft did, but you know, they did the job. We got to see a decent little strafing run at the end there just to show it off. That it can be operated by the AI, although definitely not as efficiently as it can be operated manually. But that's the case with all of the aircraft. The difference with this one is, I guess it just needs the manual operation. I was advised that it makes it a lot more efficient, yeah, which I already knew. But I don't know, it's just, it took a while. It took a very long while to actually complete this mission compared to the other aircraft, so we'll have to take that into account. Along with the fact that, as I said earlier, it only has so much thrust, so it can only carry so much weight in ordnance. That's going to hurt flexibility, and yeah. So, overall, I'd say a decent performance, but one aircraft performed above and beyond the rest. It won in the most convincing fashion. It has a lot of customizability to come with it. Well, all of them have customizability, but this one definitely has a serious amount of hard points and a lot of spare power to be able to carry anything on them. And importantly, I think it looked really, really good, and it deserves to enter service with Blue 4. And so with the Vulture replacing the A-11 Puma as the premier ground attack aircraft of Blue 4, we have another contract. Blue 4 has been noticing that its carrier-based multi-role fighters discount Hornets, essentially, but F-17 Wasps are underperforming compared to what they need out of such an aircraft. Especially on the carrier operations side of things, carrier landings with tail hooks and catapults and all that are sort of unnecessarily complicated and dangerous to the pilots sometimes. I mean, with proper training, it's not necessarily that dangerous, but that training also takes time. And so what this process could really use is a vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. So that's what this contract is. We need a multi-role fighter and attack plane for carrier operations, and it needs to have VTOL capability. This VTOL must be stable and easily controllable for reliable long-term use. And the aircraft must have a decent amount of payload capacity, it must be decently maneuverable, it must be decently fast. All the specifics will be on the Discord. But this will definitely be an interesting contract. I hope to see your craft in the submissions for it. I hope to see some of them in the video, the best of the best. And I will see you next time.